Hello and welcome to Soul's Compass Healing. My name is Brianne Lazinski and I sincerely welcome you to this space. Thank you to all of the new subscribers. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button. I would love to hear from you. Spoiler alert, I actually don't aspire to be a YouTube star. I'm simply putting these videos out to make myself known out there in the world so that I can work on more interesting projects. And so I sincerely thank you for sharing this with your friends and for your feedback and for being here. And I also offer one-on-one sessions. You can visit my website. It's all laid out there. It's in the description of this video, as is my Instagram page where you can follow me for more frequent astrology updates. So I approach things from Jeffrey Wolf Green evolutionary astrology perspective, and that is natural law, and that is where we are seeing a lot of things clashing right now in the astrology, as we have the ruler of this full moon. So we got a full moon in Libra happening on April 12th, yeah? The ruler is Venus. She's been retrograde. She's actually stationing direct on the day of this full moon with Saturn and the ruler of our lunar south node, Mercury, and of course our lunar north node in Pisces. And so this is really where we are seeing, as I was speaking to last time, the collective in a crisis, right? Where we are realizing what the power of delusion is actually capable of. And the reason why I brought up the natural law piece is because Saturn, which represents our governing structures, our society, our conditioning from our family and society and culture, is more often than not, if not entirely, on the basis of man-made laws. And so throughout this video, I'm going to be speaking to that without saying it so directly right now, but just to give you kind of like a lens. And this is so important because it directly impacts how we relate Libra with others, right? And so not only do we have the astrology that I just mentioned happen, but Venus is actually forming a yod to Uranus with this moon at the apex. This moon is in a T-square opposing Chiron, and the sun with T-squared to Mars. Sorry, so hard to explain all of this. The geometry of this full moon is wild. It's really something else. And so there's so much going on here, and the points that I want to make are that it is so clear to see that we are living in a culture that prefers to smooth everything over, right? We live in a culture of avoidance. When we have things to confront with one another, more often than not, and I know that this isn't in all cultures, but there is this overarching avoidance of conflict, right? Where it means that we are suppressing ourselves, suppressing what we think and feel in order to accommodate everyone else behaving how they behave. And so this is, with Venus coming out of this retrograde journey, we can, with the South Node really there too, we can really be feeling this like the outer oppression within our society becoming so much the fish and water aspect, right? Where we internalize and we suppress our own sense of self in order to be in relationship. And I really do want to go deeper with this and talk about how when we pretend that everything is going fine and well, let's not pretend that we aren't living in a delusion, right? That is a delusion, to look out there into the world right now and be like, yeah, everything is totally swimming along fine, we're good. And what I want to speak to this is that there is so much tension, there is so much being chiseled away, and being, the rug swept out from under us as well, with these shocking and dramatic changes that we are experiencing right now. And it hurts. It hurts to face reality, right? And so there is big incentive to continue to be in pretend land, because when we are in our delusion, it is giving us a sense of security, right? So when all of this upheaval is happening and people are feeling so unsafe and so insecure, and the delusions can be so in our face, the reality can be hitting so hard, yet people will resist facing reality so much because it is not secure. It means that we might be confronted with feelings of helplessness, right? Or feelings that something needs to change. And this is why it's easy for us in our culture to continue to float on, dissociated, and in the freeze response. And I'm not demonizing this, I'm just pointing it out, that this is functioning on a big level. We can clearly see this happening, right? And I want to really hone in on the point that that is when abuse happens. That is when the abuse can continue to happen, right? Because if there is this avoidance of the abuse and the pain, then it perpetuates it, right? Because it's not being confronted. And so, yeah, what we are seeing is being played out on the world stage, right? Holding on to delusion in order to grip that sense of having power, having security, even though it might be entirely false, right? Even though it might be entirely delusive, a complete delusion. We're noticing that people will cling on to it because that is power to them. And it never ceases to amaze me how a singular ego can cause so much destruction for so many other egos in the world, right? I mean, we cannot dispute that fact right now, looking out into reality. And so we can clearly see that those who are actually doing the hard work of disillusionment and coming back down into reality right now are finding ourselves in a continual, never-ending process of refinement, right? And it's not about being disillusioned and all of a sudden having everything perfect and all of the ducks are in a row and we've got it all figured out and here we go, right? Like being that moment that we're in right now of like this major culmination of a cycle, a major ending of a cycle right now for humanity. It's coming with this necessary falling apart in order to be put back together in a new and different way, right? And so it's it's okay to be gentle with ourselves, those of us who are coming back into reality and welcoming in all of these parts, the ones that were caught in the delusion, because let's face it, we all have delusions, we all have fantasies, we all have ideals, right? We all have hopes and dreams that we project onto ourselves and onto our reality and onto others in our life, right? So I'm not, I'm not suggesting that we deny that. In fact, I'm suggesting that we look at that, of course. And I'm questioning also why do we as a society and culture and in our relationships not want to do that? What's that about? Well, disillusionment is painful, obviously, and there is not enough safe spaces for people to process pain in our culture. We don't know how to do it. The power of emotional intelligence is massive. And right now, with this Mars T-square to Chiron and this moon at the apex of this yaw that I was talking about, it's like there is a major crisis of what do we do now? And obviously not everyone is coming back down to reality right now, but for those who are, I am really, really, really going to start focusing a lot on creating safe spaces for people to be in reality in order to process our pain. Yeah. It's very clear that sorry, maybe I won't go into that. Another reason why I'm so passionate about this is that there is a lack of emotional nurturance that many of us get from our families of origin. And this can be something that we maybe were digesting over the last 6 months with this Mars retrograde in Cancer, and how that transfers into these complex and relationship extremity roles, right? In our adult relationships, partnerships, etc., where we might fall into a role of being dependent upon another, and having a very intense merging in order to effectively get that nurturance that we were lacking from another, right? And so when that happens, sometimes out of evolutionary necessity, those dynamics, when they are needing to be addressed, the relationship can break down in all sorts of ways that can be labeled as intense, right? It can be that there are betrayals, that there is abuse going on, and so I'm passionate about us talking about these hidden dynamics going on, not being afraid to expose them so that we can be real with one another, and so that we can come into more of a self-reliance in our relating. And I am knowing that this is obviously going to be a process that a lot of us are going to be like really working on, or it's going to come up in some sort of level of crisis. And of course that has a full spectrum severity or lack of severity, but with Mars coming into his last opposition with Pluto right now, we are in this month of refining what is our direction, And that's why all of what I'm talking about is so important, is because if we're not working on Pluto, the undercurrent of what's going on, we can be sent off into a direction, because after this month, like, there's a lot of send-off energy. Um, it's like, let's be really, really as intentional as we can about this. You know, let's let's make the last 6 months that have been so hard with this retrograde journey and this exhaustion that we can be feeling on so many different levels right now. Like, let's not let that slide away in vain. Like, let's use this self-knowledge that we have gained in order to walk forward in a new way. And there can be so much grief as well when we come back to reality, right? Saturn also represents grief. Grief of the time spent when we were in the delusion, and what was happening when we were in the delusion, right? Were we a victim of abuse in the delusion? Were we a perpetrator of abuse in the delusion, right? And it's about understanding that we all have a victim and perpetrator within us. Nobody is perfect. And so there can be grief in that too. And as this collective tension and shock is being felt, we can most certainly be feeling the lack of relational accountability, which brings me to a few other points, which is, in order to maintain delusions, relational accountability needs to be suppressed, right? That's how people in positions of power continue their power over others in oppressive and abusive and harmful ways, is this lack of relational accountability. And so what is relational accountability? Well, I mean, it's so many different things, but just two different quick notes here is that it is an understanding that our actions and our inactions do impact others, aka a consideration of others. It is an understanding that there is built into the structure of how we relate to one another. So whether that be the Wednesday night book club that we go to, or the workplace that we go to 5 days a week, or whatever it is, building into that structure that it's safe to question, it's safe to have differing opinions, and to expose some things that might be hidden. And when these and many more procedures are actually put in place and enacted, everybody participating is participating in a transformation of a culture. And this is really, as you know, Jupiter forming a square to the lunar north node to be integrated through the north node, is this what I'm talking about? Like, to actually change our culture to be based on relational accountability would be so radical. Like, wow, it would be so radical. And that is the type of stuff that I'm interested in. That is the type of stuff that I'm interested in experimenting with, actually seeing how it plays out in real life with real humans, and this is where astrology can come in so effectively. Because in astrology, we can understand that there is a time and there is a rhythm for everything, and that every soul has their own time and rhythm and dynamic tensions. And so if we could be in a culture where astrology, evolutionary astrology, is actually embedded in the culture, where we have an understanding that the last 6 months has been hibernation and that we don't need to feel bad about falling apart, Could you imagine how liberating that would be for everybody? How much softer it would be to come back to reality? These are the things that I'm passionate about. Yeah, the last month with this Venus retrograde and Venus stationing direct. You know, like if we really had an understanding of what it means to turn inward. So many people in this world, that's not even a concept. How damaging is that to our culture and to how we relate to one another? Very damaging. If you never turn inwards and you never reflect and you never revise and you never refine because you're already perfect. Very damaging. Okay, what else? We're in a collective stress test. Okay, we're seeing where the gaping holes are in our society and in our culture. And, we are balancing the tension of forced innovation. I don't believe in professionalism. Well, I do to a certain extent for sure. But I don't believe in like being the stoic person who doesn't feel affected by everything going on right now. So this is why these tears are here. There is right now a tension between being creative and coming up with creative solutions and innovative ideas that are going to carry us forward in new ways, and also this tension that it's like now we have to, right? And this can feel like so much pressure right now on our shoulders, especially if you're a sensitive soul, right? It can really feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders and that there's so much pressure in order to do something that is new and different and wave paving a new trajectory. And right now, I would say that let's be with that pressure. You know, let's not pretend it's not there. It's important for us to feel it, to feel the creative blocks that we might be having and have been having for the past 6 months, and to bring that into our reality too, because that is all welcome to the table, right? Again, coming back to this culture of avoidance and denial, it's when we push it away, when we pretend that it's not there, that things get harder for us. So with Mars, I feel like I was going to say something else about that. I don't know. With Mars in Leo, going to be entering Leo on April 18th, trine the North Node in Pisces. This can, and all of this action on the North Node, like this is just absolutely fascinating astrology. We can be feeling this creative initiation, right? And in this birthing process, when we look at the human birthing process, when the umbilical cord is cut, that is the first time that the baby really truly feels insecure and its anxiety gets raised, right? Because it's like, whoa, I am disconnected from that which was perpetually nurturing me, and now it is now we're on to something totally new. Like, how am I going to get my nurturance now? Right? So it brings up a lot um, of insecurity and anxiety. And so, again, if you're feeling super anxious right now, to be expected. Don't push it away. Don't pretend that it's not there. Embrace it. Embrace the anxiety. Be there with the anxiety. Nurture the anxiety as we keep our windows and doors open for the creative flow to come through it, right? It's like if we spend so much time fighting off the anxiety, it's like, it just turns into this tug of war. Whereas if we actually go into the feelings, be in that process with them. Virgo is all about process. We're doing it in new ways because it's on the North Node, right? This is about birthing a brand new creative process and response where we feel free with our authentic expression. And where we don't, we fight for it. We fight for that freedom. We don't just belly roll over and say, all right. It's not easy, it's not comfortable. But let's remember that this stress test is really a major one for us right now because it's an amplification of the collective energy and everything that has been denied, right? And so this societal oppression that has been felt by the most vulnerable populations forever is now something that everybody who has one eye open is feeling. And so when Mars moves into Leo mid this month, it's actually about, this isn't just willy-nilly self-actualization. I'm going to use my gifts because, oh, look at me, I have a special gift. It's like, no, we are using the gifts that we are given for the collective good, to feed back to the collective right now. We are applying it with justice, compassion, a real world application, Saturn. I want to make a point that when I'm talking about feeling our pain, I'm not confusing that with sadomasochism. That is two different things, right? And often it is, I'm not going to get into it all, but often when we avoid our pain, that's when the sadomasochism complexes emerge in our consciousness. That's to bring it down to a point. Okay, it's starting to rain here, and I'm going to close this video down, and I want to point out that for those of us with anything late teens or early 20 degrees of Aries, or in the cardinal signs, there is the past 2 years has been rough for us folks. It has been a major initiation of Chiron. Chiron, right? This is what I'm talking about. Pain. Chiron is repetitious pain. And about a year ago, I used this analogy that for Chiron, where it's like a carver carving away at a piece of wood. It's like every slice with that knife feels painful. And yet where we are at right now, and I know that the Chiron themes are still alive and well, so it's not like we're standing this up for the final presentation, but we are definitely in a moment right now where we're taking a look at that piece of wood and how it has changed over the last 2 years. You know, you take a chunk of tree out of the forest, you carve it away for 2 years, it's going to look different, right? It's going to be different. There is going to be something changed, irrevocably changed throughout that process. It can't not be that way. And so when we view ourselves, who we are now, knowing everything that we have been through over the last 2 years with, and this is also, you know, can be applicable to most people who are awake and addressing their pain in their life too, because Chiron has been a theme for many of us in the collective. So we're standing up this carving now and having a look and like observing it through this full moon and just being like, wow, observing it through the mirror of others. Maybe we're noticing that there are fewer others in our lives. Maybe we're noticing that we are no longer self-sacrificing in order to play into these socially prescribed roles where we lose out in relationships, where we fall to abuse in relationships. And there can be so many other things that you can be noticing in your own particular healing journey. I'm just sort of naming a few generalized themes. And this mirroring back through the other is really important with this Libra full moon. And doing it in a way that is not smoothing over. Not pretending that the last 2 years have not hurt. Right? Taking time to notice all those grooves, all of those shapes that have emerged in the wood, the different colors that are emerging in the wood, the different, grains and textures that are emerging in the wood. It's like, right now, let's take some time to be with that. And the creative process of finding our way forward through this tension is going to happen as long as we stay with the process, right? And we're not denying our pain. So, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you being here. I sincerely hope that for the rest of this month, as Venus culminates her time in Pisces, this time around she'll be entering Aries on April 30th. So we really do have a month of being in this process and of refining, and come May there will be definitely a shift in energy, and I really just want to, the point of making this video was to really explain what Neptune at 0 Aries and Mars going to be at 0 Leo mid this month, and that trine happening. It's not let's hit the ground running, let's go, we are initiating a new path, boom, boom, boom. It's like we're initiating a new path, and we're doing it from this very, very grounded place, this Venus in Pisces place where we're grounded in what we have within ourselves, the resource that we have to share with the world, and we're finding how do we apply that in a way that can enact real world change, practical change. Saturn. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here, and I will speak to you next time on the Taurus new moon happening at the end of this month. Wishing you all of the very best.